Most people put their dog and cat together, cross their fingers, and hope for the best. And then they spend the next 6 months breaking up fights, chasing the cat out from under the bed, and wondering what they did wrong. Here's the thing, it wasn't what you did during the introduction. It's what you skipped before it. This video is going to walk you through 9 steps to get your dog and cat actually living together in peace. And I know, you've probably seen this kind of content before. Go slow, use a baby gate, reward calm behavior. That's the version everyone makes. But what nobody is talking about is the sensory science underneath all of this. The scent mechanics. The predatory sequences. The stress signals that most owners never even learn to read. By the end of this, you're going to understand your animals on a level that most pet owners just don't, and that knowledge is what actually changes the outcome. I do want to flag one thing before we get into it. There's a step near the end that almost every owner skips because it looks like the introduction has stalled. It hasn't. And if you push past it too fast, you reset the entire process back to day one. So keep that in mind as we go. Let's get into it. Step 1. Set up completely separate spaces before anyone meets anyone. Before your dog and cat are anywhere near each other, both animals need their own dedicated zone in the home. Not just separate rooms, fully separate setups. The cat needs food, water, a litter box, and at least one elevated resting spot, all in a space the dog cannot access. The dog needs their own sleeping area, their own feeding spot, their own zone. This isn't permanent. It's the foundation. And the reason it matters is that both animals need to feel like the home already belongs to them before they have to share it with a stranger. If either one is already anxious about their own space, you're starting the introduction with a stressed animal, and a stressed animal cannot learn new associations. It can only react. So before you even think about introducing them, spend 2 to 3 days just letting each pet settle into their own territory independently. Let them decompress. Let them claim their space. Then and only then do you move to step 2. Step 2, scent swap, but do it the right way. This is where most advice goes wrong, and it's the step that actually changes everything. The common version of this is, swap their blankets so they can smell each other. That's fine, but it's imprecise. Here's what's actually happening when your cat rubs their face on things. Cats have scent glands near their cheeks, lips, and foreheads, and those glands release what are called feline facial pheromones, whose main purpose is marking territory. But here's the part that matters for you. The scent glands around the face are identified as friendly or low intensity. Compare that to group 2 marks, the alarm marks, which are produced by the paw pad sweat glands or anal glands and signal the shunning of a zone. In other words, a blanket your cat slept on carries a mix of signals. A cloth you've gently stroked along your cat's cheek line and forehead specifically collects the calm, friendly pheromones, the ones that say, "This is safe," rather than, "I was stressed here." Rubbing the face against objects transfers these scents, which helps reduce anxiety and create a sense of security. So when you present that cloth to your dog, you're giving them the most accurate, peaceful scent profile your cat can produce. Do this for 2 to 3 days, a fresh cloth each time, and let your dog investigate it at their own pace without any pressure. Step 3. Test your dog's predatory drive before the face-to-face meeting. This one is something trainers do that most pet owners have never heard of, and it could save you a lot of trouble. The full canine predatory motor pattern goes: orient, eye, stalk, chase, grab bite, kill bite, dissect, consume, and the movement of prey triggers it consistently. But dogs were selectively bred by humans to emphasize parts of that predatory sequence, which means many modern dogs still feel the neurological reward of chasing, grabbing, or shaking even if they've never hunted anything. So before you ever put your dog in the same room as your cat, grab a feather toy or a fabric strip and drag it across the floor from a distance while your dog watches. What you're looking for is whether your dog's stalk chase grab sequence activates on movement alone. A dog that gets mildly curious and then moves on is in a very different category from a dog that locks onto that toy, lowers their head, and goes completely still before lunging. That stillness is the thing. Most owners think a quiet, frozen dog is a calm dog. Behaviorists tracking predatory sequences know that the eye stalk phase is nearly silent. Vocalizations are not emitted during this phase in most breeds. A dog that goes rigid and locks eyes without blinking is actually deeper into a fixation response than a dog that's whining or pulling at the leash. The noisy ones aren't always the dangerous ones. The still ones deserve your attention. This toy test gives you a baseline before you ever risk it on the cat. If the response is intense, you know you need to do more desensitization work before moving forward. If it's mild or disinterested, you're in a better starting position. Step 4. Introduce scent through a closed door first, not a gate. Here's where the standard advice gets it backwards. Baby gates are usually presented as the safe first contact tool. But for cats specifically, a baby gate gives full visual and auditory contact all at once, and that can flood a cat's nervous system in a single moment. A door cracked just a few inches, enough for scent and partial sound to pass through, but not enough for a clear sightline, lets the cat control their own exposure at their own pace. Trigger stacking in cats refers to a situation where multiple stressors occur in quick succession, leading to an accumulation of stress or anxiety. Each individual trigger might not be enough to cause a strong reaction, but when several happen one after the other, they can overwhelm the cat's ability to cope. A cracked door limits how many sensory inputs hit at once. The cat can sniff under the gap, listen, and retreat whenever they want. That sense of control is not a small thing. It's the difference between a cat who approaches the door out of curiosity and a cat who hides in the closet for 3 days. Give this stage at least 2 to 3 days before you move to any kind of visual contact. Step 5. Feed both animals on opposite sides of that closed door. This is the step that actually rewires the emotional response, not just builds tolerance. The common framing is positive reinforcement. What's really happening is classical counterconditioning. You're pairing the presence of the other animal's scent with something intrinsically pleasurable. Eating. Every single meal, both animals eat near that door. You start with the bowls far enough away that neither animal shows any stress, and over several days, you inch them closer, one small step at a time. Trigger stacking is the physiological accumulation of stressors that occur over hours or even days, pushing an animal past its emotional threshold. When a pet reacts, it is rarely about the final minor event, it is about the heavy chemical load their body was already carrying before that event even occurred. Feeding sessions do the opposite of that. They drain the stress bucket. Every meal near that door is your animal's nervous system learning. The smell of the other animal means something good happens. Do this for at least a week before any visual introduction. Don't rush it. The goal isn't for them to see each other yet. The goal is for the scent alone to become neutral or even pleasant. Step 6. First visual contact through the cracked door, not a face-to-face meeting. Once both animals are eating calmly near the door, you can crack it slightly more so they can catch a glimpse of each other. Not a full view. Not a gate. Just a sliver. Watch both animals carefully during this stage and know what you're actually looking for, because this is where most owners misread the situation. For the dog, a loose, low, wide tail wag paired with relaxed hips is genuine friendliness. A high, rigid, tight wag paired with forward-leaning weight is arousal or potential aggression. Most beginner content treats any wagging tail as a green light. It isn't. Wag height, speed, and stiffness all carry completely different meaning from the wag itself. For the cat, watch for flattened ears, a low crouched body, or a puffed up tail. But also watch for the opposite extreme, a cat that seems completely fine in the moment. Because here's something almost nobody talks about. Trigger stacking is the physiological accumulation of stressors that occur over hours or even days, pushing an animal past its emotional threshold. Stressful events can impact behavior for days after. A cat can seem perfectly calm during the actual introduction and then start over-grooming, avoiding the litter box, or hiding 3 to 5 days later. Owners see that delayed reaction and think something new went wrong. What actually happened is that the stress from the introduction was still sitting in the cat's system, building up, and it finally spilled over. If you see those signs days after a session, that's the introduction telling you it moved too fast, not a separate problem. Step 7. First face-to-face meeting with a long leash, not a short one. When both animals are consistently calm during the crack door feeding sessions and the brief visual glimpses, you can move to a controlled face-to-face meeting in a shared space. And the leash choice here matters more than most people realize. A tight, short leash restricts your dog's body language options and increases frustration-based arousal. It also telegraphs your own anxiety straight down into the dog's body. They feel the tension in the line and they interpret it as a signal that something is wrong. A slack, long line, something around 6 feet or more, lets your dog make small voluntary choices, looking away, sniffing the floor, shifting their weight. Those small choices are actually building calmer associations. You still have control if you need it, but you're not manufacturing tension in the dog's body before anything has even happened. The cat should have full access to the room and, critically, multiple escape routes. The common advice is to give the cat a high perch to retreat to. That's right. But the overlooked detail is this. If that perch has only one entry and exit point, it becomes a trap the moment the dog is directly below it. Cats need vertical escape options with at least 2 ways down. A cat that feels cornered, even up high, is a cat that will eventually come down swinging. So before this session happens, walk through the room and ask yourself, if the dog were standing at the base of that cat tree, does my cat have another way out? If the answer is no, rearrange before you bring the dog in. Keep the first few face-to-face sessions short, 5 to 10 minutes. End them before either animal shows stress. You want both animals to finish each session in a calm state, because that calm state is what they'll associate with each other going forward. Step 8. Reward the right behavior, and know what the right behavior actually is. Most people reward their dog for being nice to the cat, which usually means they're rewarding the dog for looking at the cat without lunging. That's a start, but what you actually want to reward is your dog choosing to look away from the cat. Anytime your dog glances at the cat and then voluntarily redirects their attention to you, to the floor, to anything else, that's the moment. Mark it immediately and reward it. That voluntary disengagement is your dog's nervous system choosing calm over fixation, and every time you reward it, you make it more likely to happen again. For the cat, reward any voluntary approach toward the shared space. Don't force proximity. Don't pick the cat up and carry them closer to the dog. Let every step toward coexistence be the cat's own decision. Scientists have identified several distinct facial pheromones, each serving different communication purposes. These chemical signals can indicate everything from territorial boundaries to emotional states. A cat that chooses to enter a room where the dog is present is a cat whose emotional state is shifting in the right direction. That's what you're building toward. If you've been finding any of this useful, honestly, drop a comment below and tell me which step surprised you the most. It genuinely helps more people find this video, and I read every single one. And if you want to go deeper on reading your dog's body language specifically, there's a video right here that breaks it down sign by sign. Watch that one next. Step 9. Recognize the mutual indifference phase, and don't push past it. Here's the step almost everyone rushes, and it's the one that resets the entire process when you do. After weeks of controlled introductions, you're going to reach a point where your dog and cat are in the same room and basically ignoring each other. The dog is lying on the rug. The cat is on the windowsill. Neither one is paying the other any attention. Most owners see this and think the introduction has stalled. It hasn't. Behaviorists identify mutual indifference as an actual milestone phase, not a plateau, not a failure. It means both animals have processed the other's presence enough that it no longer demands a reaction. That is the goal. That is what success looks like in the early stages. The mistake is pushing for interaction before both animals have fully settled into voluntary disinterest, trying to get them to sniff each other, nudging the cat toward the dog, encouraging the dog to go say hi. Trigger stacking is the physiological accumulation of stressors that push an animal past its emotional threshold. And forcing interaction before they're ready is exactly how you stack those triggers and send both animals back to square one. Let them be bored of each other. Let them exist in the same space without it being an event. That indifference will gradually, on its own timeline, turn into curiosity. And curiosity, when it comes from both animals voluntarily, is where the real relationship begins. So here's where we landed. Before the first meeting, you set up separate spaces, you swap scent the smart way using facial pheromones specifically, and you test your dog's prey drive with a toy before you ever involve the cat. Then you introduce scent through a closed door, You use feeding sessions to rewire the emotional association, and you move to visual contact only when both animals are consistently calm. For the face-to-face meeting, you use a long leash, you give the cat multiple escape routes, and you reward your dog for looking away, not just for not lunging. And when you hit that quiet phase where both animals seem to be ignoring each other, you stay there. You don't push it. You let it breathe. At the start of this, the idea of putting your dog and cat together probably felt like a gamble. Now you know it doesn't have to be. The science has been there the whole time, most people just never got to see it. If this helped you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and go watch the body language video right after this. It'll make everything you just learned click even harder.